Yeah. Please tell me that I can't, that I won't, that I fail, that I'll never make it out, yeah. Please tell me all the bad, never good, fill my head full of every single doubt, yeah. Please say any negative thoughts, I pop off when I hear people say I cannot. I get off to the thought of proving everyone wrong, I won't stop to the top, so you better back off and get lost. I'ma stay.
Hey team, this is Nathan from RunDreamAchieve.com. Today's topic, we're going to be going over how to improve VO2 max for running. And without question, the VO2 max improving your VO2 max is probably one of the most difficult parts of training and preparing for your races. We can go out and run aerobically for several minutes, several hours, and yes, you're going to build a great deal of endurance, but in terms of improving your body's VO2 max, that is going to be highly challenging. I know a lot of you already know what VO2 max is. If you're new to the channel or if you're new to the sport, VO2 max is running at your maximum oxygen uptake. You're running at closer to between 95 to 100% of your maximum oxygen capacity. So when you're going out and you're doing repeat 400s on the track, or you're running an all-out race on the roads, that type of effort is, especially if you're running like an 800 meter or a mile and you're going all out and you're absolutely taxed at the end of it, that is an example of running at close to your VO2 max or right at your VO2 max level. And that's why I always talk about the importance of doing one VO2 max workout per week, because in order to improve this capacity to be able to train at very, very high levels of lactic acid buildup and being able to extend the amount of time you're training and you're racing at that particular effort, it's going to take commitment. There is no easy way of improving your body's VO2 max capability without continual stresses to the energy systems of the body, and that takes also high focus on periodization. So when I talk about periodization, what I mean by that is, you're focusing on a specific amount of time you're stressing the body at a specific intensity. So if say you're trying to run under, say, 15:25 for 5,000 meters or 5 kilometers, you already know you have to maintain 4:58 per mile average for 3.1 miles in order to run a 15:24. So in order to do that, in order to handle that lactic acid buildup that's slowly getting ever increasing higher amounts as you're racing, you have to train sufficiently and really hammer the energy systems of the body, and you have to really train hard anaerobically on the track, on the roads, for a long, consistent period of time, whether that's 4 weeks for some people, 8 weeks for others, 12, 16 weeks. The longer you can prepare for your races, the absolute better you're going to be in the long run. Because again, anything that's worth doing, great, is worth doing right the first time. So, over the years, I had to make a lot of mistakes along the way before I could get to a point where I could run the types of times that I ran. I was not an athlete that had a great deal of talent, okay? People that see athletes breaking, 2:20 for the marathon or running 14:18 for 5K or, 1:07 for the half, they think that these athletes have, a high amount of talent. There's what you're not seeing is the process that goes into it. So in order for you to run fast, whatever event you're going for, whether you're trying to break 20 minutes for the 5K, or you're trying to break a 3-hour marathon, or maybe you're trying to run a 1:10 half marathon, you have to get that race pace that you're going after to feel more like a moderate effort, rather more like a tempo effort, where you're running at your anaerobic threshold, which is your anaerobic threshold is the point where you start to build up lactic acid in the bloodstream, but you're not running so aggressively and so anaerobically like you are when you're running at VO2 max effort. So you can spend a longer period of time running at your anaerobic threshold versus running at your VO2 max, which again is running around 95 to 100% of your maximum oxygen uptake. It's running between 95 and 100% of your maximum heart rate as well. So again, to improve your VO2 max, you have to continue to be consistent in terms of stressing the energy systems of the body. So that's doing, that once per week VO2 max workout you're doing. Also, running at faster efforts for your tempo runs and running at longer periods of time at your anaerobic threshold, doing those very paced long runs. And I'm telling you, and I've had a lot of athletes that have invested in my training plans and running courses that say, hey, this method of training for marathons or training for 10Ks or half marathons or whichever program they got is really different than what I've done in the past. And it is. And anything, especially if you're going after a much faster time than you've ever run before, more is going to be required out of you. Okay, so you're going to have to get out of your comfort zone. If the fastest you've run say a marathon is 4 hours and 20 minutes, to go from that to 3:59, if your goal is to break 4 minutes or 4 hours for the marathon, you have to spend considerable amount of time training much faster than you're used to. So improving the body's VO2 max takes a consistent effort for a long enough period of time. You have to be strategic in what you're doing. You have to be patient more than anything. I think the tendency for us to want quick results and to expect that we can push the body hard and continue to push the body hard and it will continue to bounce back and give us what we want isn't always the case, because if you're not allotting sufficient time to recover from your hard VO2 max workouts that you're doing, the longer anaerobic threshold training runs you're doing, those longer tempo runs, the longer varied pace long runs where you're dropping, like say you're trying to run under say a 2:30 marathon, you're in that long run and there's miles in those long runs you're dropping, say every fourth mile you're dropping a sub 450 mile right in the middle of your long run, or a sub 5 minute mile right in the middle of that long run. That's not normal. That's again, that's a different mindset. It's a different philosophy, but it's a type of philosophy that's needed in order to not only improve your body's VO2 max, because again, you're doing a combination of a lot of very hard anaerobic workouts, longer durations of training at your anaerobic threshold, which is right around 88 to 90%. So it's slightly less aggressive than the VO2 max. But and plus you're doing your VO2 max training. Examples of VO2 max workouts, in my opinion, and stuff that I've used in the past, is running, especially if you're training for the half, the 10 miler, the half marathon, is running for 1 hour, where you're running one hard minute, very hard, and for me, when I was at my fittest, I'd be running that one hard effort right around 440 mile pace, and then followed by 1 minute easy, which wasn't easy. It was right around 615 to 640 pace, still quality running, and then attacking again right at 440 pace or 435, 440 pace, bam, and then going right into an easy and doing that for an hour. That was a technique that a sub 210 marathoner by the name of Gilbert Ruto that I trained from. He was from Kenya. He and I worked together and we continually did that. Early on, I couldn't handle running an hour with him. I would go maybe 35 minutes to 40 minutes. But later on, as I got stronger in the sport, I could go an hour. So you have to continue to push the body hard in terms of really stressing, running very, very high intensities, building up very high amounts of lactic acid, giving yourself more rest earlier on, as you're not as anaerobically fit early on in your training phase. But as you get fitter, your heart's going to be able to handle, that same effort, but you're going to be able to handle, you're going to be running at faster paces, and you're going to be able to handle faster paces with even less rest than when you first started your build-up. So improving the VO2 max is extremely hard, as we all know. The best way to really get a gauge of what your VO2 max is a VO2 max stress test. I had one done at the USA Olympic Training Center in Colorado Springs by a world-renowned exercise physiologist by the name of Randy Wilbur. If you look him up, he's one of the top exercise physiologists in the world, right up there with Dr. Joe Vigil. And I was very fortunate to be tested by him. What they do is they run you on the treadmill, and it depends on how they want to test you, but usually it's every they'll run you at a specific intensity for 2 to 3 minutes. They'll stop you briefly, prick your finger, and gauge. They'll test the blood lactate level in your blood at the intensity you're running at, and then they'll slowly increase the incline on the treadmill, and they'll have you run for 2 to 3 minutes with that slight incline. And again, it just gets harder and harder and harder until you run to exhaustion. And then they test you right when you're completely shot, and they test you then. That is kind of like one of the best ways to get, and also one of the most painful ways to get a VO2 max stress test, and to determine what your VO2 max is. Now, VO2 max isn't everything though, okay? There are athletes that focus heavily on this. It's an indicator, but there's no indicator. There's no test that can, test you in terms of how powerful your mind is. We can test the body physiologically. We can get tested physiologically by exercise physiologists, but it's up here. It's the power of the mind. That is something that cannot be tested. So there are some world-class middle to long distance runners that have very low VO2 max scores. And then there's other athletes like Steve Prefontaine, Frank Shorter, for example, that have very, very high VO2 max. Usually they're like 84 to 88 millimoles per kilogram. Very, very high VO2 max scores. But some of the world's best runners, like Rob DiCostella, I think he ran around 208 for the marathon back in the 80s, 90s range, and he had one of the lowest VO2 max scores. It was like around 65 to 67. So it's not the be-all, end-all, okay? Just because you have a lower VO2 max doesn't necessarily mean that you're not going to succeed in a middle to long distance event. So it's a combination of a lot of things. What's most important is staying consistent over a long enough period of time and having that tenacity and being willing to put in the work longer than the average Joe or Jane out there. Okay, great results come over time, and improving the VO2 max of the body, like I said, is something that you have to have a long-term approach, because it doesn't happen overnight. You're not going to improve your VO2 max by running aerobically. If you go out and you run an hour to 3 hours for a long run, you're going to be extremely strong aerobically, very strong endurance-wise. But in terms of strength and stamina and being able to sustain race pace longer than your competition and being able to be effective at clearing that lactic acid fashion that's building up, you have to stress the energy systems. You have to train very hard anaerobically, but also allot sufficient time to recover. So make sure that you're jogging on those easy days, hydrating well, paying attention to your nutrition, getting plenty of sleep, doing all the other variables that go along the way in order for you to get to that golden moment where everything comes together. You've tapered down correctly, you've done a 10-day taper, and you lead into that big race that you've been going for, and you're able to sustain the pace from the start line, and you just feel like you're in that flow state where everything is just clicking. That's where I want all of you who are watching these videos to get to. Whether you're just watching videos or you're investing in your personal development and you're investing in a running course or a training plan or coaching with me online, I want you all to get to that flow state where you've put in the work. You're no longer as stressed and fatigued going into your races, because you have that confidence that you've done everything in training that you possibly can do, and there's nothing that your competition isn't going to be able to throw at you in the race that you haven't already accomplished or encountered or put yourself through in training. Training should be the most difficult part of your preparation. The race itself is not the day to be stressed out and tense. Let your competition to be stressed out and tense. Relax, stay calm, be confident in what you're doing, and you're going to go into your race much, much more better prepared, because again, you've stressed your body sufficiently, you've allotted time to recover, and you've eventually, and the overall goal is you've improved your VO2 max, because again, you've been strategic in how you've set up your training. So I hope this video is helpful for y'all. Feel free to give me a like if you can. I definitely appreciate that. And leave a comment below the channel, below all of my videos. Definitely helps more athletes around the world see these videos. But more importantly, I can interact with you all. Feel free to leave a comment if you have a specific question or comment, something you want me to go over in my next video, and I'll definitely reach back out to you. I always aim to comment on every single individual athlete that responds or leaves a comment on any of my videos, whether that's good or bad. Look forward to talking with you all in the next video.